So my name is Greg Sherry. I'm the National Youth Empowerment Director for a company called Magellan Health. I'm very, very excited to be here with you guys today for this event, Recovery in Action, in partnership with Recovery in Motion. And for me, it's always, an awesome thing to be here with a group of people in recovery and talk about recovery. I'm somebody who has spent lots and lots of time in recovery. I spent a lot of time in mental hospitals. I've had about 12 different hospitalizations as a result of my bipolar disorder, as a result of my inability to stop using substances. And thankfully, by the grace of God, I found recovery. I got into the field of mental health through what's called peer support. A lot of you guys are maybe familiar with. I went to a peer support training program. A short time later, I had the opportunity to run that peer training program. And then I began working for the company I work for now, Magellan Health, back in 2008. I started coming to Idaho about 2.5 years ago. Magellan, one of the things that we do is we work with different communities, cities, states, counties, to help them manage their behavioral health services. As you may have heard, there is an opportunity here in Idaho for another company to work with Idaho to be able to enhance services and whatnot. We'll be submitting a bid, a proposal for that. And in order to submit a proposal, we really have to know what's going on within Idaho. So that's what a really cool job that I get to do, colleagues Rebecca and Dana get to do, is get to come here and really talk to people and meet with people like John and Norma and be able to try to learn what's working, what's not working, and how we can make things better, as a community. And so, without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and bring up my man John Brandon here, who we've had the distinct pleasure of getting to partner with for this, and he's an amazing man, and there you go. Don't roll your eyes on that.
Okay, wow. Well, I do want to welcome all of you. I appreciate the governor being here, the local legislature, state officials, our vendors and our shareholders and all that we do. But especially I want to thank the public for coming out tonight, because tonight's your chance to let us hear what you have to say. And that's extremely important. And of course, I want to thank Magellan Healthcare, Dana, Rebecca, and Greg for doing this. I want to say one quick thing. Greg came to the airport last night, and boys, he showed up over here. He has still not gotten his blood. This guy has. I hope tonight the local communities, as they face the challenge of continuing to provide resources to the local communities and maintain this really healthy, robust lifestyle that we have here in Idaho. We're very fortunate here. Okay. Now, Idaho has always been a great place to live. My father was stationed here during the war at what was then the Army Air Corps. And the R&R destination was Sun Valley. And he went up there and saw the Wood River Valley and fell in love with it and decided that's where he would retire. So to make sure he could make it back here, girl. And 11 years later, he retired. He brought her home to her family so she could be around them. And that allowed him to buy a home and business up in Ketchum, Idaho. So from the age of 10, I've been an Idahoan. And I've never found much of a reason to leave here except during my military service. Along with many of you, I feel it's important that we all work together to ensure that the life that we have here continues. So, one of the approaches that the Idaho legislature has taken to help local communities sustain our way of life in Idaho is to ensure services are provided for those who need assistance in staying connected to their communities, particularly those that have mental health and substance use disorders. How do we reconnect them back to the community and continue to make them part of the culture? To do this, they established 6 crisis centers and 9 recovery centers throughout the state of Idaho. The crisis centers will provide a 24-hour stay, and then hopefully they will refer them to like a recovery center or someplace that can help them, assist them with their needs. The recovery centers, we can pick them up with a soft handoff and immediately start saying, what are their needs? Ask them, what are you lacking? What do you need help with? And then the recovery coaches, who are the workers within the centers and the peer support specialists, then pick that up and say, okay, you need this, 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 and this. This is what we're going to do. We're going to help you fill out the paperwork. We're going to help you get through this process, because the process sometimes of finding housing, finding transportation, all that is extremely stressful. And those people who, of course, have a mental health or a substance disorder, that's not a good time for them, and it's not easy for them. So we try to provide that resource. So in that process of building our support system, Governor Little has been prominent in that, in helping us sustain what we are doing. He's done all he could, as I can say, to make sure that the funding continues so that we can move through everything and move through this COVID crisis. So the Idaho Association of Recovery Community Centers, IARC, has decided tonight, for the first time, we're going to award the Idaho Champion of Recovery Award to Governor Brad Little. He is the first recipient. Would you please come up, sir? The reward says, in recognition of your passion and dedication in sustaining recovery centers in the state of Idaho, the Association of Idaho Recovery Community Centers presents Governor Brad Little with this token of our appreciation and gratitude.
Well, thank you. I very much appreciate that, because it really means a lot to me. Director Jeppeson's here, but my entire legislative career, if you look at everything we want to do in Idaho, there have been two items that continue to grow somewhat unplanned, and that was Medicaid spending and corrections expenses. And as I was in the legislature and then lieutenant governor, and then now in my job is I make recommendations on priorities to the legislative branch. It was abundantly clear to me that my goal was that we want our kids to stay in Idaho. The ones that left to come back, frankly, doing real good there. It seems like everybody's coming back to Idaho right now. but a lot of it is in Magic Valley is prominent in the creation of jobs and opportunities. But now a lot of it's about quality of life. And so as I worked on all these projects, whether it was in the legislative branch or the executive branch, it became obvious that there's a lot of things that we need to do. And I want to give credit to the judicial branch. They came to Director Jeppesen, Dave Jeppesen, your Director of Department of Health and Welfare, and we are very blessed that out of our 5 Supreme Court justices, 3 of them have been very involved in drug courts, mental health courts, problem-solving courts. And we went to the legislative branch, and all 3 branches, and I believe we're the only state where all 3 branches have come together, and this is the document that they have come up with. Idaho's Behavioral Health Council's 2021 to 24 Strategic Action Plan. And if you haven't seen this, it's on Director Jeppesen's website, and it's available. But a lot of things you're going to talk about are part and parcel of this graphic early on, I know it's in the book somewhere, of this graphic right here, of all the different parts that are promotion, prevention, engagement, treatment, and recovery. And the committee really did a good job on this. And there's actually an action plan with timelines in it. And literally all those resources, there's a chart that's available at Health and Welfare that talks about what we need to do. Your meeting here is part of that, but we all know that recovery, substance abuse, mental health permeate everything we do in Idaho, whether it be our correction systems, our courts, our hospitals, social services, schools, and many other areas. When I talk to educators, they always, what are we doing about teacher pay? What are we doing? But when I bring up the issue of behavioral health, uniformly, teachers from one end of the state to the other, that is a big challenge. And these dedicated classroom teachers will tell you that one of their biggest challenges is all the different challenges that these kids have, and what do we do to help them? And so we put money, the legislature put money into behavioral health, we'll put more money into it as we go forward this year. And then simultaneously with that, we put together my opioid and substance abuse disorder advisory group, and they're making recommendations to us. And we're just trying to tie all these things together so that we either don't stumble over in state government, local government, and private entities, and faith-based groups. We don't stumble over ourselves, but we leverage what we've got with what we need going forward. And of course, simultaneously with that, we've got, what are we doing on implementing Medicaid funding going forward? That really has given us a lot of runway in a lot of areas where we needed it going forward. And John talked about our crisis centers that we put out regionally, and then the recovery centers. And of course, I'm from Emmett, and so something that I'm passionate about is how do we scale it out to rural Idaho? Twin Falls, Oakdale, Idaho Falls, Boise, Coeur d'Alene. It's obvious we're going to have areas there, but how do we scale out to these rural communities, whether it be remote delivery or hooked onto a hospital, hooked onto whatever's there. And we do know behavioral health is best when it's done regionally, but we want to coordinate it. And that's what our goal is out of the 7 regions, whether it be with the health districts, whether it be with the hospitals. One of the things on the correction side, which Commissioner Renke knows a lot about, is what we've done, what we started doing in corrections, and we continue to ramp up our investments in connection and intervention stations, and what we're doing there. But before I became governor, one of the directors that came after Brent was there, who was there, they basically, they were saying at that point in time we needed more space in our correction system. And I said, show me a troubled, early, preschool, early K3 child, and then show me the inmates that we've got, that are lifers, and show me all the on-ramps and off-ramps. And where do we deploy money at each stage to try and stop the continued expense that we have, and how do we get in early? How do we identify these problems early and then best take care of that problem? When Brent was there, we always talked about our recidivism rate and what we do about that. And that's been part of the plan, and that's what's in this document. How do we coordinate those efforts? And the Behavioral Health Council has put together a great plan. We originally thought it was going to be a temporary, we're just going to get everybody together, say what we've got, and then maybe go on our merry way. But it became abundantly obvious that this is there's a big enough need and a crying need for us in the state of Idaho to continue with that coordination, particularly from the three branches of government. We've got the legislative representation, Dave and Sarah from the judicial branch are the chairman of it. But if you read this document, I think you will find the recommendations are spot on. But that doesn't mean we can't continue to improve on it. That doesn't mean we don't have more work to do. We've got that Medicaid funding that's very helpful. And then we've got the settlement on these opioid lawsuits that we want to make sure that we fulfill the intent of the judge when they made those orders, that we take care of some of the problems that have been created by substance abuse. We've always had the problem with alcohol and the nexus between the two of them. I'll tell you a cute story. When we first started this, I remember we were in my conference room and I said, I think I read somewhere where it's 65% of the behavioral health have a substance component. And somebody else said, well, maybe like 75. And then somebody said, well, it's more like 85. And I think, didn't we end up with like 90%? The nexus between behavioral health and substance abuse. Well, there's no way you can bifurcate those two things. You got to look at them holistically. And I know that's what you're going to talk about here. And because if you do try and run them in different silos, you're not going to get it done right. You're not going to do it right. So the recommendations in this document, what you're trying to do here, what we're doing to support the crisis centers and recovery centers are going to go a long way for Idaho, for improving our quality of life for everybody. We've come a long way. I went in the legislature in 2001, and we didn't have very many programs. They weren't very well coordinated. You know, opioid issues. I don't know that the word fentanyl was ever used. You know, there was opioid, and then there was methamphetamine, and now the problems have been exacerbated from a lot of areas. 20 years ago, the problems that these kids have because of bullying with social media didn't exist. Some of those challenges, life's just got more complicated, and we need to recognize that. And I am very, very hopeful that the recommendations, I see Representative Harkin in the back of the room, the legislature has been very helpful. Representative Likely served on this from the very get-go, and from this area is very passionate about it. We really do have a great plan going forward, but it's you and your local community saying, looking at this and saying, what are we doing and what can we do to make this system more efficient? What do we do to where, as early as possible, we can find those people that have fallen through the cracks, and what do we do to leverage all the different resources? If you look in this document, it totals up about $380 million that we spend in one way, shape, or form on behavioral health. If we first start doing that as efficiently as possible, and second, we find those areas where we're too late getting into the game and do some preventive education, help these teachers identify these kids early before they get to be a problem, it's just going to be the right thing for the state of Idaho. John, I want to thank you and everybody, the vendors, and everybody that put this on. I have great hopes for this. Our upcoming budget year, we're going to have some opportunity. Now, a lot of this money is going to be one-time money. And I know that the legislature is going to be interested in putting money into behavioral health, substance abuse, particularly if it'll build capacity. It'll build capacity at the local level to where there's a subsistence to it, that we get a hold of these problems, get ahead of these problems early. And that's my message to you. I just want to thank you for what you've done. It's people in the local communities rolling up their sleeves, helping the kids, helping their fellow man, doing the right thing for their communities it's going to make this state a great state going forward. So thank you all very much. I look forward to hearing from Lexi and Kayla about what you've done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. So, in case I've had, the blessing to work in mental health in Louisiana and Arizona, and in case you're wondering, it is a very, very unique circumstance when the governor comes out to an event like this and is so passionate about recovery. I've never seen it in any other state. So thank you for all your support of this and for coming out. It's an awesome thing. We do have a couple more awards though. We didn't want governor to be the only award getter tonight. So, if Miss Norma Yeager and John, would y'all mind just coming up real quick? I come from the 12-step recovery community, and the term old timer and the term of endurance, it's not that good term, but just getting to know these two, and just being someone who wouldn't be standing here in front of you if it wasn't for a mental health court in Arizona. And for somebody who wouldn't be standing here in front of you if it wasn't for 12-step recovery, and somebody like John, reaching a hand out to me like he does to so many people here, I certainly would be here. So we just had some little awards for you guys. Idaho recovery. You know, Ms. Norm has been a real pioneer in the drug courts and the mental health courts across the state, and has helped countless people have the opportunities to recover. So, Dana, you're going to introduce our next speaker for us. This is my good friend, Tom Dana, for the song, who's also a person in recovery.
Yes, my name is Dana Vogelstone. I'm the National Director of Recovery and Resiliency Services from Magellan Healthcare. And I'm also the board president for the National Association of Peer Supporters, which is like sort of a trade association for the peer support profession. And I am super passionate about peer support because it saved my life. So I'm a person at the age of 18 who started to experience things that others didn't, saw things, hear things that others didn't, and ended up in a state hospital at 18. And a couple years later, ended up in another state hospital. That time, the psychiatrist made the recommendation that I get on disability because I was never going to get better, which led to a cycle of me going in and out of hospitals because I was pretty committed to taking my own life and had zero hope until I met a man named Gordon McGill, who was a certified peer specialist. He was a person who, like me, had a serious mental illness, but he had things in his life that I was told at that point that I would never have. So he had a full-time job, which I was told I would never have. He had a family, he owned a home, and he was the living example that was recovery was possible for me when everyone else, including treatment professionals, because I was in every treatment you could think of, had lost hope. And so I got the chance last night to talk to Donnie Martin, who is the lead volunteer at Recovery in Motion. And when I heard your story, it made me think of Gordon, because he helped hundreds of people find recovery and find hope. And honestly, there are people who would have taken their lives if they didn't have somebody like a Donnie or like a Gordon who was that example and really expected recovery, not just thought that maybe it was possible, really expected recovery. Donnie has, over the last 2.5 years, donated so much time, 52 hours a week, that if you were able to be paid, that was like over $100,000. But because of a background screening policy in the state, is actually not able to get paid, and that's not unique to Idaho. That's also in my state. So there are a lot of things that still have to happen to make peer support not only available but acceptable. And that's one of the the challenges that you all have in your state that really needs to be addressed. So Donnie, will you come up and share your story with us?
We can use that one.
So, welcome everybody. First off, I want to start out and say that I'm a survivor of 35-year drug and alcohol addiction. January 11th of 2016. Thank you. I was arrested for that. They took my 15-year-old son away from me
in child protective services and foster care. And it took me 8 months to get him back. I did, I think, 28 days in jail. And when I got out, the very next day, I stood up in front of, I think there were like 27 people at my case management meeting with health and welfare. EPA funding was there, some relatives and different stuff. And I stood up in front of everybody and told them that
A child care
I used to say you have to kill me to get my son away from me, because I knew eventually it was going to happen. And I said, so that's exactly what happened. I killed the addict in me. And I never went back to drugs, alcohol, I quit smoking cigarettes. I've never relapsed. I'm in my 5.5 years of college now. I'm working on my bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies with a certificate in public health and a certificate in leadership. I've volunteered over 2 years now at Recovery in Motion, and I've been putting in 52 hours a week. I've facilitated up to 8 groups a week, recovery groups. I sponsor right now over 30 people in recovery, and I call myself a recovery advocate. And I also, there's so many things. I struggle now with my criminal history. I went to court here a couple of months ago, got my last felony possession taken away, and my misdemeanor injury to child taken off. The judge told me that it's unheard of, almost unheard of what I've been doing, and so he just signed it off. And that's pretty easy. More expensive, but pretty easy. So anyway, every time I go for an enhanced background check, I can't get past it because of my juvenile record, 46 years ago, just sealed, is holding me back. And 25 years ago, I had another injury to child misdemeanor. And those are the things that are holding me back. And so all I know is I'm going to have to ask for a pardon and take it. So anyway, what I want to say is that I'm very passionate about recovery. I wake up every morning with recovery on my mind. I go to sleep with it on my mind. I reflect at the end of my day that I do my very best to help each and every person that I come into contact with. Then I reflect on what's going to come the next day. What's my schedule? What am I going to be doing? And so on and so forth. Then I pass out for about 4 hours. Then get up and take the dogs out. Then go back to sleep for 2 hours, take the dogs out. Then I get up and go on about my day. My homework is about 5 hours a night, so I'm up till midnight every night for homework after I get out of the recovery center at 7. So anyway, so there it is. So, thank you.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Donnie. And thanks for all who helped you in your journey and who you're helping in theirs. That's pretty amazing thing. All right, I'm excited to introduce this next duo. We had a chance to do a little Zoom call in preparation for this, and my passion is really working for young people. In my work at Magellan in 2008, I started a youth program called My Life, which basically gives young people an opportunity to kind of flip the switch. So to use their negative experiences as positive by being able to help their peers, by being able to advise companies like Magellan or the state on how to make things better for young people. And meeting these two, it just really rejuvenated some of my energy, because COVID, we haven't really had, we've been having these virtual events, but just seeing their passion and hearing their passion for wanting to make a difference was pretty awesome. And so they've helped starting the Warriors youth group over at Recovery in Motion, and John's been working with them for quite a while, and they have an awesome little presentation they're going to make for you guys. So you guys give it up for Miss Caitlin and Lexi. And take. Okay.
Yes, just switch over one slide.
I'll be your slide. Do you want to share the one mic or you want two mics? Okay. Okay. All right.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Crabtree, and this is my friend, Mr. Robertson. Today, we are here to talk about awareness of the struggles of mental health in adolescents and what we need to do to help. In the last 4 years, we both have known a total of 8 people who have committed suicide due to depression and other important mental illnesses, not including the people we have known who have attempted suicide and have self-harmed. 8 people in the last 4 years. We have both struggled with anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts since the beginning of our teen years. I have personally survived a suicide attempt, and even after years of counseling and medication, I still felt alone in the battle of depression and felt as though I had nowhere to go. This is why we have conducted a mental health support group for adolescents called the Warrior Project. We have a semicolon in place of the I to represent the struggles and awareness of suicide and other important mental illnesses. The semicolon is used by an author when they think about ending the sentence, but then continue to finish the rest of the sentence. You are represented as the author, and your life is the sentence. The Warrior Project is open to adolescents ages 13 through 17. It is also a safe place for all people, including the LGBTQ plus community, people of color, people who struggle with substance abuse, depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation and or attempts. Everything that is talked about in our group stays confidential unless we are worried that you might harm yourself or others.
It is important to learn about some statistics within our state having to do with suicide rates in order to be able to work on preventing it. The Idaho suicide rate hit a record high in 2020. In the last 11 years, there has been over a 50% increase in gun suicide within people ages 10 to 24, and the youth suicide rate in Idaho has increased by 105% also within that time. Idaho has the 5th highest suicide rate in the U.S., and suicide is the second leading cause of death among adolescents. LGBTQ plus adolescents are 4 times even more likely to consider or attempt suicide.
Sure.
An important person in our lives, John, often tells us that there are 3 things that every person needs: is to be loved, to have a purpose, and to know where you're going. Without any one of these 3 things, none of your quality of life needs will be met. Adolescents especially need these 3 things because our development is the most crucial at this time, and we will not be able to function properly if these needs aren't met. To be able to have these 3 things met, we need more mental health resources for adolescents. About hardly any adolescent programs, and that needs to be changed. These can include more mental health support groups like ours and more advertisements for these groups. We get the least amount of funding when we are the most important. We are the future, most importantly, your future, and what do you want that to look like?
We are all individuals, but we need to come together to solve these problems and to connect to the lives of teens who are struggling. In today's world, the people who are supposed to be leading and protecting us are forgetting us and paying attention to things that matter far less than adolescents' lives. We need to include the introverts, the people who sit alone at the lunch table, the people who feel alone while trying to figure out their sexuality and gender identity, the people whose skin color is not the same as the white kids in class, the people who drown themselves in alcohol so they can forget about their pain, the people who use drugs to cope with their constant anxiety and fears, and the people who feel completely alone in this world. We cannot forget about them and push them to the side because they matter too. We all matter, and we all deserve to get the resources that we desperately need in order to finally be able to feel safe in our own heads.
We as a community need to understand, listen to, and take the responsibility to further our education on the struggles of mental health and what will happen if we continue to ignore it. We need to create our own medicine, but we also need to work together to fight this constant battle of adolescent depression. We now ask for help from the Idaho legislators. What can you do and what will you do before more of us give up? The people that we knew who ended their lives asked for help. We all were their last chances and we were too late. Their voices were not heard then, but we hope you heard ours today.
Wow. So powerful, and that's, that's what we really need if we're going to really make a huge difference in this. And it's really cool. We've seen, our government officials, we've seen professionals in the field, and we've seen young people, because it's really, that's what's going to take, everybody working together. For our next, Ms. Norma, would you mind coming up and introducing our next distinguished guest? Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, sorry.
They always say stand up. I say I am standing up. Well, it's a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure to be here to see so many friends from so many parts of my work here in the state. It's a great pleasure and a privilege to hear the people who have spoken. And their stories are so important to all of us. And there are hundreds of stories like that. I'm the director of an organization called Recovery Idaho. We're a statewide recovery community organization. And one of our mission goals is to collect those stories and to make those stories widely available. Sometimes we only hear about addiction, or we only hear about mental illness, and we don't hear about recovery. And recovery is everywhere. And so we want to get that message across. And so I'm particularly pleased at the opportunity to introduce a great colleague, a great leader for our field, Dave Jeppesen. Dave comes to this work maybe hereditarily, because he has a sister who is very much involved in this. Start his tenure with the Department of Health and Welfare. I think it was like the week before you actually came on the job, a catastrophic skiing accident. Ended up going to the legislature in a boot and probably crutches, a wheelchair. But he has, as have so many in this room, survived and flourished and has not given up. The Behavioral Health Strategic Action Plan has amazing, important components for recovery. And it's really, I think, in many ways, the first time that recovery has been identified as a critical and integral part of the continuum of services. Dave is committed to that. He has been a champion and a supporter. And I do want to make one comment. The governor's gone, but you need to know that the governor has not only supported our efforts at recovery community centers, but he has stood with us. He has stood with us on great joyful days, and he stood with us on a very sad day a couple of years ago. But he has been there in person. And when he talks about his commitment, when he talks about his belief in the work that you all are doing, it is very real to him. And he stands with us. So I would like to introduce Dave Jeppesen, the director of the Department of Health and Welfare, and he's going to speak a little bit about the Behavioral Health Strategic Action Plan.
I feel better about the state of Idaho because people like you. Thank you for that. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm my co-chair on the Idaho Behavioral Health Council, Sarah Omenson. She's actually on vacation, so she sends her apologies for not being representing on behalf of the council. And it's been a really unique experience. I can tell you that at all levels of state government, the leadership is very focused on how do we help improve behavioral health for the citizens of Idaho, for the people that live here, so that we can have better outcomes, so we can have recovery, resiliency, better outcomes for individuals and access to services as they go along. I can tell you there's only one other topic that the governor talks to me more about than behavioral health. You can fill in the blank on that. No, I'm not going to go. That's a different speech for different audience. And so behavioral health is top of mind for him. As the governor mentions, the Supreme Court is very focused on behavioral health. They've invited me over, very generously invited me over multiple times, solely to talk about behavioral health. Not only just how it interacts with the court system, but how as a state we can move forward. And the same is true of any legislator that I've ever spoken with. And that's how the Behavioral Health Council was formed, is through the three branches of government, through local government and providers and representatives of the community. And our goal is to really look at the entire behavioral health system. Our objective was to not just dive into one problem, but really step back and look at the whole system and say, in the whole system in Idaho, what's working well, and we need more of that. What's not working well, and how do we fix that? And what's just missing, and how do we get that into the system? And that's really been our purpose. And for the sole purpose, we're at this kind of macro system level, but it all matters for individual people. It matters in individual people's lives. And it makes a difference. It makes a meaningful difference in people's lives when they have access to services and get into recovery. It was pretty early in our process, what we call it the protractor. The governor mentioned that. But that has recovery as in there. Recovery is a key piece of what we've been focused on as a council. Because recovery, well, how long does recovery go on? It's a lifetime, right? It's an important piece. Otherwise, we start that cycle over. And so within the plan, I noticed you guys highlighted a couple in the yellow sheet here. On this yellow sheet, it's got a QR code, by the way, that you can look at the whole plan. This is a paper copy of it, and it's out there on the website on that QR code. But we have a couple of things that we actually prioritized up to tackle first. And one of those was, and two of those were in recovery. One was to identify services to support long-term recovery for individuals in Idaho. The governor has been very generous. Every year he's added money to my budget to make sure we can support recovery centers. I know he'll continue to do that. The legislature has supported that every time. And we need to put a plan together with all of you to make sure that we have a long-term sustainable recovery approach and system in the state. The other item in here in recovery is to identify opportunities to enhance protective factors and promote long-term resiliency in children and youth who have experienced trauma. Trauma is one of the sources of many of the things that impact people's lives negatively. Are you guys familiar with ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences? It's something that's most people know about now. You probably know the data is very clear that the more ACEs an individual has in their life, the more impact it had, on all aspects of their life: economic, behavioral health, substance abuse, even lifespan. The data says that if a child has 7 ACEs or more, they're going to live 20 years less than the average person in the U.S. And so really focusing in on that trauma. And in my mind, resiliency and recovery go hand in hand. I think of recovery as coming out of some of those substance abuse and behavioral health episodes, and resiliency is coming out of trauma. And not letting that trauma define that individual, but allowing that trauma to be something that they have resiliency for and move forward. Ideally, we don't have any trauma to begin with, but we're not quite there yet. We're going to keep working on that. In the meantime, we'll focus on resiliency. The other thing I would just say about the strategic action plan is we're not done. We have the plan. It's a strategic action plan. We intend to make a difference. We have the executive order that created it is 4 years, so we have 3 years left. We intend to make a difference. We want these things to come to life. And the way we can't do that alone, we can't do that as one. This is a big problem, any individual. You guys, in literature, there's a difference between the villain and the monster. And so I'll give you a little, this kind of illustrates my point here. The villain, in literature, to overcome a villain takes a hero. And that's the motif that's in most of our literature and popular culture, is the villain-hero scenario. And that overcomes the villain. And a monster, the difference is it takes the whole village to overcome the monster. And that's the problem that we're dealing with here with behavioral health. It's going to take the whole village. And so what we are hoping is this becomes a roadmap for all of us, for all of you in this room, as we move forward, that we can get our oars going the same direction, that working together we can accomplish these things we've highlighted, to give some directions to each of us as to where we can put our effort in, so we can come out at a better place that better serves the people of Idaho. And that's already starting to happen, as evidenced by this meeting tonight, actually. And the last thing I want to mention is the guiding principles. As we finished up the strategic action plan, we really realized in addition to the recommendations, we really wanted to describe how we wanted this work to unfold. And I would encourage you to read those. There's 7. There's 2 that were highlighted on your yellow sheet, and I'll just call them out. The first is, this must be consumer and family voice. And in each of these principles, we have a we commit. And I'm going to read this one because it says, because the voices of consumers of services and their families are crucial to proper implementation of the Idaho Behavioral Health Council Strategic Action Plan, we commit to include them as indispensable partners in program design, implementation, and evaluation. My experience is solutions designed without those they benefit don't often work well. And so we are committed to making sure that we include the consumer and family voice. And then I'll skip down to number 4, which is recovery and resiliency oriented. We commit to design a system that focuses on the lifelong process of improving wellness and strives to assist consumers and families in reaching their full potential. And that's the key element of how we move forward and makes an ongoing difference in people's lives. So thank you for letting me be here. I'm super excited that you guys are talking about the Behavioral Health Strategic Action Plan. That means it's already starting to work. And thankful for the leadership that has come out of the Twin Falls, the Region 5 area. It's phenomenal. I had a chance to tour a couple of years ago, the Crisis Center as well as the Recovery Center. I was blown away with the resources you have here. And in my mind, that's just the beginning. So thank you for all you're going to do. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you very much, Director Jeppesen. And when I saw this Behavioral Health Council Action Plan, I was just super impressed because it is so detailed and it just hits so much, and so much of it focuses on recovery. We didn't have like the printing ability to print the whole thing, or we probably would have. But as a group, we've kind of gotten together and really highlighted. There's a lot more of these recommendations that are focused on recovery and recovery principles, but these are some of the ones, and a little bit later we're going to get to talk more about them. I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, who's somebody I've known for about 15 years now. I met him, actually I was working at a recovery center in Arizona. He was a Phoenix police officer at that time. And he is just someone that's basically always been on the grind and has such a heart for helping people in recovery. Not only his work as an officer, but he had started this thing where we got this room, something like this, where he'd bring in all these different providers. But it was like, food stamps, Social Security, healthcare, and they would bring homeless people, from the streets into this one, room, and they could get all these services right there at one time. I've seen him countlessly help homeless people that he repeatedly arrested all the time and said, okay, let's try to get this guy some help rather than but he's an expert in crisis services. He helped transform the whole crisis system in Arizona and helping, get people brought to mental health care rather than to jail or prison. So Mr. Nick Margiotto, everybody.
Hi, good to see you all. So I've asked Greg to put up a PowerPoint, not so much for you, but I'm a bit tangential. And so we'll be finding Jimmy Hop.
And let's say hi to all of our people watching on Zoom. We do have a great group
For
of
those
people.
Zoom folks, I understand the microphone's here, so hopefully that helps.
All right. Well, hopefully it'll be better.
So we'll work on that. I really am excited to be here. It's nice to be out. I was a little embarrassed to say it took me about 10 minutes in the bathroom to remember how to tie my tie, and I had to YouTube it to figure it out. But I do have full winds are going for you all, so if that helps. And the other thing is, I'm going to apologize up front. As passionate as I am about crisis, I'm equally as passionate about reentry and justice things. But I know Norma's got all that covered, so I'm going to leave half of my spiel off. When I first told to Greg, he said, take your normal hour and a half and do it in 40 minutes. I'm like, no problem, Greg. And then he's like, well, we got some more people. Take your 40 minutes and do it in 20. I'm like, no problem, Greg. And he said, do your 20 in 11. I'm like, okay. So I'm going to channel my New Jersey Italian and talk as fast as I can, which is my normal baseline. But happy to be here. Thank you for getting that up, buddy. That'll help. Now I got two hands. And I truly do believe that public health is part of public safety. And these are critical intersections. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about crisis, and I will try to jam this in real quickly. You can probably go to the next slide. And leave Norma to handle all the corrections and the reentry, but these are so intimately tied. So I want to tell you a little vignette, and I'll try to do it kind of quickly. As a retired Phoenix police officer, I worked at the fifth largest city in the country. I worked midnight shift for about 9 years in the inner city. My beat actually at the time was the smallest beat in the state, the quarter square mile. So it was a hopping little part of town. And right around 5 years in, I kind of had hit that jaded street cop stage, right? We all get in the job to help folks and everything, but you start dealing with things day over day. And I remember in 2001, Phoenix is one of those strange cities that actually started CIT, not in response to a bad incident, but a friend of mine was a lieutenant and somebody from the behavioral health system got together and tried to create it. And so I got to attend that first class. I was hand selected, one of 15 folks to go to it. And I went through it and I'm like, wow. And I still remember the NAMI in our own voice presentation and an individual who was in recovery from substance abuse, and obviously told that at the very end of their hour and a half presentation around substance abuse disorder. And it was shocking. And I still remember those two people to this day. And I'm like, wow, it kind of re-empathized me, right? I kind of, I'm still a cop, but I can see how this is going to interface. And I was kind of rejuvenated. And I learned how to do all those great verbal judo things and all this great stuff. And so then I'm like, all the resources, Arizona has the privilege of being under the longest behavioral health lawsuit in the nation. But one of the things it did is it pushed a lot of money. And so we actually had a fairly vibrant crisis system of a lot of resources. Learned about it all. And then I went out next Monday, 10 o'clock at night, I start my shift. And one of my regulars, Kathy, still remember the address, 327 North First Avenue. It's no longer there, so you can't figure out who Kathy was. But it was one of those small kind of SRO type of complexes where when you walked up the stairs, they were on a cant to get up there, right? And I would see Kathy a couple times a month. She obviously had a severe mental illness, but I wasn't sure of all the details. She was frequently would threaten suicide by taking 100 Tylenol, which doesn't seem like your normal way. But if you were to take 100 Tylenol, you're not coming back, right? And she would do some drinking and stuff. And she could be a little challenging at times. And I get out there and I'm CIT in the heck out of it. Right? I'm doing all my great CIT stuff. And holy cow, it works. And me and Kathy are engaging, and I don't have to threaten her with a petition. And we used to contract for safety back then, kind of luckily that's gone now, but right, I didn't have to do that. And we're talking, I'm like, Kathy, I'm going to get you some help. She's like, if you take me, I'll accept the help, which is not normally how this goes. Quite proud of myself. I run down to my patrol car, and we've got these crisis centers. Frankly, something even more robust than what you guys have, right? So remember the address of this place, 2627 East Thomas Road. It's embedded in my head because it was worthless. But so we get there, and I drop her off at the psychiatric crisis center. And what do you think they told me?
You won't take her.
Why?
Because
Because she's
she's
drinking. We're not going to take her. Wait a minute. We just heard 90% of the folks are home, right? I'm like, no worries. I learned about this other great place. We got crisis detox. 2001, we got crisis detox. I drive her down 2770 East Thomas Road, different provider doing it, now under different management. I get her there. What do you think they tell me? Why? She's suicidal. So, statute of limitations are up. I drive by potentially county hospital. I may or may not have put the car in park. I don't know, right? But I'm sad to say, not sad, I left her in the parking lot of county hospital and wished her luck. And now all of a sudden you guys are all mad at me, but a second ago I was the hero, right? I was the good guy, right? And I'm like, wait, I'm not the bad guy. I went to this training. I'm willing to try it. I was told all these great things that were there, and I was lied to. And the reality is, I stopped doing CIT at that day. I got one day. Now, I still kind of spoke to folks a little bit differently, right? But diversion didn't matter because I knew I couldn't divert. So I still did police work the same way. I might have had a little bit more understanding and empathy, but I didn't change the way I police. Can you click for me, buddy? Or I'm going to break everything and you know. So I stayed involved with the concept, right? Because I did a lot of homeless things. I actually helped create our first Housing First initiative, of which police were part of right there. But I said a couple of years later, our CIT program had atrophied. I agreed to take it over. And I said, I'll do the training. But here's the deal. I'm going to spend 90% of my time working with the behavioral health community. I'll do the training, but I'm going to reach out and work with the providers, the peer runs. We have some, that's actually where I met Greg through one that he was involved with, right? And start working there. And so this here's a great presentation that takes about an hour to go through, so I'm not going to get away with it. But your community has CIT. It's quite common now, a lot of places. I just had the most wonderful lunch, that neat little co-op with the most amazing sergeant that you guys are fortunate to have in Twin Falls. She's lovely, Dusty, and has done some great things over there, right? But CIT is so much more than training, and everybody talks about training, and it led to this concept of which training is one of them. I won't take the time to eat up where all these others, but community collaboration, this kind of stuff, meeting, going to lunch, talking, problem solving, joining as you're planning new resources, involving law enforcement and other stakeholders, detention, correction, as you're developing things, right? And then a vibrant, accessible crisis system. I had a very large, well-funded crisis system that was worthless to me from a police officer's perspective, right? And so that's where I started to get most of my passion. So from 2004 is where Phoenix and Maricopa started to really transform their crisis system. Next slide, I'm moving as quick as I can. And it led to my favorite slide. This is easily a 40-minute slide. I could spend all day on this slide and get up on the table. But what it basically said is, and this has other applicability other than first responders, but the reality is, even with 988, sorry, I'm supposed to stand over here, even with 988 coming and all these things of trying to, police are still, and first responders are still going to be out front of a lot of these things. And so we want to make sure that we're leveraging the opportunities that when first responders encounter things, they have the ability to connect to more positive therapeutic options other than just the justice system. And so this is where we landed. I came up with my remove the barrier. There's 3 elements. And I still remember when I did this in front of actually Louisiana State Director. I'm like, it's about customer service based upon the customer that you're dealing with. And there's multiple customers, right? There's the member that you're interfacing with. There's your funder. And then there's your key stakeholder, me, the collective me, right? And most of these were designed not at all thinking of what were the customer services need of first responders. And this was like this great illuminating light bulb of which seems so common sense, right? It's like the little thing on top of the Starbucks coffee, right? So you don't spill. I mean, it's that obvious, right? You just put the little green thing, right? We don't spill. Why did that guy become a millionaire? Not me. But these were the things, right? So it was the no wrong door philosophy, right? If law enforcement's bringing, it's quite easy. The answer is yes. So if I bring you there and you were suicidal, the answer is
Yes.
If I bring you there and you were drinking, the answer is
Yes.
if I bring you there and you have, I'll clean it up a little bit, but if you're very disheveled and dirty, the answer is
Yes.
right. And so it doesn't matter if they're mental health, doesn't matter if it's substance, doesn't matter if they're on Medicaid, doesn't matter if they're not on Medicaid. Now, it certainly matters for long-term care and everything else, but it shouldn't matter in saying yes, right? Doesn't matter if they're too drunk, and sometimes folks are potentially too drunk, but then we can coordinate to another system rather than tying somebody up in a pretzel, putting them back in handcuffs in the back of a police car. To go there, let's at least get them to the more appropriate place and then allow the system to navigate there. My other favorite one, and I know they're looking at me, but I got to tell the story, it's so funny. So I had, we really have a gold standard crisis system in our group. So I get all these folks coming, and I'm doing my whole spiel, and I'm talking about how they take all the drugs. So like, Nick, the problem isn't, they'll take my 2 drunk guys. They won't take the folks that aren't drunk enough. Yeah, he's not drunk enough yet. And I look at him, I'm like, darn, that's easy, man. I'm just going to go to 7-Eleven, buy him a 40, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Right now. I mean, how is that a problem? Come on, right? But these are the things that used to happen, right? It's got to be quick. And when we're talking about mobile, the idea of mobile in a perfect world is it's quick, it's certain, you're not triaged, they always come. You get there quickly. Quickly is defined by your community, right? In an urban setting, it might be 15 minutes. In a frontier, it might be 2 hours, right? So it's regional. And then release police so that police can go back to being police. Behavioral health can be behavioral health. And take this uniform out of the equation. Because we all talk about trauma-informed care, but gosh, I want that cop standing with him the whole time. Because people with mental illness are scary. But isn't that the exact opposite of what we say, right? And so get that out of it when it's safe to do so. There's always a time it's not safe. It's a different conversation, right? Next slide, I'm moving. And I got about 1.5 more minutes, but gets me to here. Like, this is where like my passion is, right? Peers are the workforce solution, right? They're the answer. And I'm nothing against clinicians. If anybody's a clinician, some of my best friends clinician, my significant others, psychologists, right? So, I mean, I got all that. But I'll take a peer any day of the week working with folks that are having challenging in crisis. I used to have folks that would go out and do homeless work with me and do follow-up that had 8, 10, 12, 14 years in DOC. And they'd be sitting in the front of my police car going out to do stuff, right? The power of peers. And don't forget or let anyone tell you that peers can't or shouldn't be part of crisis delivery. They can and they should, right? Increasing anxiety, shared experiences, right? You gotta do it right. You can do it appropriately, and they're not a replacement of clinical, they're a complement to clinical, right? And then they can do all the things I really want to talk about, but I'm not going to because it's enormous, about discharge planning and coordination of care. And we even got it where police officers can deal with the crisis and take this lovely gentleman to a crisis center, let's say, or maybe arrest him today, who knows, right? But whatever.
No, it's not my lucky day.
But then I can refer them for my peer to go do some proactive follow-up. Because the peer can go knock on the door now, have a conversation, have a conversation with them, offer to work to try to prevent the future crisis. So with that, I could go for another 5 hours, but I'm not allowed. Thank you all for putting up with me.
He needs some more passion, right? a little more passion and enthusiasm in Starbucks. Would be good. All right. Very nice. I'm gonna ask Miss Norma to come back up. Are you up for coming back up and just he kept calling you out so many times. I figure you got to at least respond to that in some kind of way. No. And if you would.
You want to chip in?
Oh, okay. Well, gosh, talk about hard acts to follow. The only thing missing are the cute dogs. But this is also a particular pleasure. We talk about the importance of peers, and after the many years, I'm not going to tell you how many, but the many years I've spent in this field, I am absolutely committed to the power of peers. Absolutely committed to that. And there's someone here, there's many someone's here I could drag up here, but I have someone's name on my list here, and that is Miss Stephanie Silva. Come on up. Stephanie is all about the power of peers. She has a story, she has a past. That's her story, but she also has a future, and that is her real story. Thank you.
There's a lot coming from you, Norma. My name is Stephanie Taylor Silva. I am a reentry specialist with the Idaho Department of Correction. I serve our great state in District 7 probation and parole, a role that I'm very proud of and I take very much to heart. 3 of the roles that are most dear to my heart that I proudly serve in are peer support specialist, recovery coach, and family support partner. These are roles that I know are crucial to our fellow advocates and peers in recovery. Without them, I don't know where I would be at today. I am a person in long-term recovery from methamphetamine and cocaine addiction. I had a 14-year addiction to cocaine that nearly took my life numerous times. I'm also a formerly incarcerated person. I have been justice involved since I was 16 years old. While many people were coming out of my graduating class at Skyline High School with dreams of going off to college or entering the military, I was on my way into an Idaho correctional institution with 2 felony drug trafficking charges. I've been introduced to a gentleman in my teens years that was 14 years older than me, and I did not know, unbeknownst to me at that time, but he was one of the largest drug traffickers in our area. I soon became a victim of human trafficking under him, and would later find myself to a point where I was kidnapped by him and his friends, taken to California where I was gang raped, stabbed, and placed into a medically induced coma. I'm really glad that Director Jeppesen brought up ACEs. That's something that has come up numerous times in my life. I have an ACE score of 9. I'm a survivor of childhood abuse, childhood sexual abuse, sexual assault on top of this thyroid cancer. So I'm very lucky to be alive. I'm very lucky to be where I'm at today. I struggle with a traumatic brain injury that caused numerous problems throughout my life. I managed to get into college when I got out of prison, and struggled my way through there. Unbeknownst to me at that time, it was actually, I had been introduced to Region 7 Behavioral Health and Miss Lisa Kohler. If you don't know her, she's absolutely wonderful. She worked at Region 7 Behavioral Health at that time, and that's the first time I had been introduced to a peer support specialist, but I didn't know what role that she played. But I will never forget the role that she played in my life. Lisa, you had a profound impact in my life, so thank you. You saved me at a time when I could not save myself. When I came out of prison, I had absolutely nothing. Our correctional system at that time did not place a heavy focus on reentry, and I'm so thankful that I was able to be resilient to that. It would have been so much easier for me had I had a recovery coach or forensic peer support specialist to assist me when I came out of prison. My life would have looked so much different. I was homeless when I got out of prison. The only clothing that I had were the prison clothes that I was released in, some shower sandals, a donated pair of jeans, which were way too small at the time, my white prison t-shirt, and a prison ID. I didn't even have I-9 documentation when I came out of prison. I had no idea how I was going to get to work, just how I was even going to move forward in my life. I was struggling with depression, PTSD, anxiety, on top of trying to figure out how in the heck am I going to overcome this 14-year addiction to cocaine and methamphetamine when I knew absolutely nothing different. And I decided then that I was going to change that. I never wanted to see another person come out of prison the way that I did, feeling lost and hopeless and not knowing how I was going to move forward. One of the biggest game changers in my life that I have ever been through was recovery coaching. I was in college. I had entered college 2 years after my release from prison, and I was taking a law academy class in Idaho Falls, and my prosecuting attorney, I call him my prosecuting attorney, he actually belongs to the county, but I love him. He's a beloved mentor in my life. He'd come up to me after class and said, "Stephanie, you are doing so well. You need to get into recovery coach training." I'm like, "What is recovery coach training? I've never heard of this before." But I had great trust in Danny, so I said, "Okay, I'll go do it." I'm super shy at the time, was just really introverted, and so I got into this recovery coach training. And 2 classes in, I just remember sobbing hysterically. Our teacher at the time, Liberty Potts, and also another phenomenal recovery coach in our state, was teaching this training, and that is when the light bulb went off for me, that there are other people in this state that have been through the same thing that I have went through, and they're passionate about putting their life back together. They're passionate about helping other people. That recovery coach training completely changed my life. After that, I decided I wanted to do more, and I went into peer support specialist training and then family support partner training. I assist with my niece and nephew. Unfortunately, they lost their mother. She died by suicide in 2013. So it's been a great honor to serve as a family support partner as well. I am so proud that as my role as a reentry specialist, I'm working now with our executive leadership on developing a strategic reentry plan for our great state. And part of that looks like my advocacy, strong advocacy that we have to include forensic peer support specialists, recovery coaches, peer support specialists, and family support partners. We are the experts in that field. We are. We know how to overcome this. Who better to teach somebody how to get through something than somebody who has actually been there? Am I right?
Yes.
We just developed a new strategic reentry plan for the department. If you have not seen it, I encourage you to go to the department's website and see it. You can see it under the directors tab. We envision a safer Idaho with fewer people in our correctional system. Our mission now is to create a model correctional system that provides equitable access to programming and opportunities that reflect community experience, foster connection, and restore victims of crime. What stood out to me most there is fostering connections. That's how we're going to get better as a correctional system and as a state. And we are going to do that with recovery coaches, forensic peer support specialists, and peer supports. We are at a pivotal time in our state. We are finally moving forward, and I can say I have never been prouder to be in our great state. We still have a lot of work to do. We must never forget, where we've come from and continue to lift each other up. I am so thankful I've been able to work and I was granted 2 full pardons in both the state of Idaho and Montana. This still does not allow me to pass a background check. We have to change this. We have all got to work together to change this. Justice-involved people, our history cannot be erased, but we sure as heck should work towards making sure that it never prevents us towards helping another person again. I am muddling my way through graduate school. I have contacted Norma, ugly crying Norma, and with her, mentorship and encouragement that I will get through this. I'll be testing for my LMSW next year and plan to move my way on as a clinician and program manager in the prisons and the Department of Correction. And I guarantee you that my voice will be just as loud for peer supports, recovery coaching, forensic peer support specialists as it is now. Let us never forget that we all must unanimously work together towards the same goal, that we never allow another person to recover in silence.
See if it'll come on now. Yeah. Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was awesome. That's what it's all about. Just really is. It's cool how it's just passed on, how you've been inspired and helped by somebody, and now you're helping other people, and now, they're helping other people, I'm sure, as well. So, all right, before we're going to be getting into a discussion, portion here soon, and the ideas, but to kind of get us there, to inspire us, to really motivate us, is this guy. Do y'all recognize this guy? Was I supposed to put it up now or then, or what? Is that a good time? Believe it or not, that's Mr. John Brandon a couple of years ago.
Hi, I'm John. I'm an alcoholic addict.
Hey, John.
That's the way it's supposed to be. I got a bunch of notes, but after everything that's down and said, I'm just gonna free fall here with you guys, okay? So I can come from my heart.
Yeah.
Check it. Can I give you this just so the people online can hear? Sorry.
So I am 34 years in long-term recovery.
Yeah.
I have been sober now longer than I used. I have a major depressive disorder, which I am treated for. I am a retired nurse. I am the director of a recovery center. Wow. I had a dream in 1995. I was going, we're losing people. They're coming out of jail. They're coming out of hospitals, and nobody is greeting them. I worked at Canyon View. We detox people 7 days. We turn them loose. They walk a block and a half down to the Shell station and get their 18 pack. So A few years ago, I worked with a local group in town with a project called Bridge the Gap. And we tried to institute that, and it kind of came and went, and finding volunteers didn't work very well. And then I was asked to be on the board of directors for a couple of organizations, like the Local Crisis Center and the Recovery Center. And it dawned on me, and it was funny because I had forgotten about this dream that I had in '95 that I had said to somebody where I worked. And he was on this board meeting. He says, "John, you've been talking about this since 1995. And I said, "I have?" And he says, "Yeah." And somewhere they said that marijuana affects your memory. I can't remember. Okay. So anyway, I got asked to be director at the center. I don't like managing people, folks. I will lead you anywhere, but I don't want to manage you. So I kind of go, what am I doing? So I do what I do in my recovery. I surrender. And I go left foot, right foot. I do the next thing according to the principles that I have learned now that the results up to something greater than me. And guess what? We're here tonight. The governor showed up. Yeah. Magellan has been sitting and talking to me about my dreams over the last 25 years. I have two young ladies here that got up and spoke about what my heart is all about. Now I care about all of you. I really do. There's a few of you I like. And there's a handful of you I'm really going to spend any time with. But the fact is, I do care about all of you. But we've been behind the ball instead of in front of it for a long, long time. Not only do we need to get ahead of this thing and meet those people when they come out of facilities, we got to go out to the adolescents and start talking to them. 5 to 11-year-olds, their suicide rate in the last 2 years went up by 12%. 5-year-olds? Okay? So all of a sudden, here's this thing called a recovery center. It says we want to meet people. We want peer support and recovery coaches, people that have lived experience within this thing. Okay? I go, wow, let's do this. So, thanks to the legislators and the governor, I mean, we are a fiscally conservative state. I'm going to tell you, we're socially progressive. When you look at what they're planning for this state, they're forward thinking. So I said, let's do this job. And all of a sudden I had people start talking to me about what they were doing and where the resources were and how we're going to do this thing. It's huge. But then see, I dream these really big dreams. So next thing you know, we're doing recovery coach training. We need more. Because we do need more. Especially peer recovery coaches. Now, clinicians and therapists, I love what you do. I do it for myself. Okay? But again, I echo what Stephanie said. And it's the old idiom that goes back to 12-step programs. It's one alcoholic talking to another. We understand each other. We know the language. We know the feeling of what it was like. So right now, Idaho, we are really at that moment. Tonight, I personally did not realize how this was all going to unfold, and I am in awe of how this has come about. You know why? Because it was meant to happen. We are at the right moment, in the right time, in the right state to do something that people have been talking about forever to make this place where we support one another, we care about one another, we have this great life that we live. So we're doing recovery coach trainings. There's been talk now about a recovery coach academy that'll kind of organize everything and create a flow. Yeah, we've had some ups and downs, we've had some stumbles, but the recovery coaches are waiting. They're waiting to help people. The services are free. Spread the word. And because of the opioid crisis and the monies that have come down to us, the Idaho Department of Correction and what they've given us, we have funding. Now, I don't like to talk too much about funny because as soon as I say money, my door's gonna get knocked down. But I want to tell you, I have $17,000 for just fun. So if you're in recovery and have a mental health disorder, and you need to get into a sober situation, come down to my place. We're gonna take you fishing on Saturday, and you're gonna be with a bunch of other families that are gonna go fishing too. It's not just gonna be the person in recovery, it's gonna be their significant other and the rest of the family. Because we are a tribe. Very special tribe. Okay? I know there was a whole bunch of stuff I was gonna talk about, and I don't care anymore. I really don't, because it's already, everyone's already said, you know, Nick, where's Nick? Yeah, man. Yeah, my student says, he's just like you, except on crack. Okay, so the guy you saw up there, that young man, he looks pretty cocky in that picture, doesn't he? He's doing his thing. That's his 10-year reunion. And in order to go to that reunion, now I'm gonna tell you about that guy. He was top in his class. Valedictorian, student body president, but he drank every weekend. Okay? And at his 10-year reunion, he was still scared. He was still stressed and full of anxiety that he was gonna be good enough. So that guy there, he's drank a few too many beers. He's probably put some powder up his nose, and he just smoked a doobie. Now, for you young people, a doobie.
What?
But boy, he really looks like he's got it going on. All right, that young man was traumatized at the age of 10. And at the age of 13, he drank his first drink. And that first drink was so powerful that to this day, he can tell you every detail about the room he was in when he took that drink. And it worked really well. Worked really well. And then when he was 17, along came hippies, free love, and pot. And game on. I found my tribe. Let's do this. And he loved what it did for him. What he didn't realize is what it was going to do to him. And eventually he hit a wall. And everything was being lost. And fortunately, as we say by the grace of God, there were two people standing in front of me. And I said, the back of us alcoholic act mind, we know we are. We can't admit it, because once we admit it, then we got to do something about it. So my question was to these two people was, do you think I'm an alcoholic? They didn't tell me I was an alcoholic. They told me their story. And I could identify. Now, I didn't come into a program because I was an alcoholic. I came in with a back problem. I wanted the drugs off my back, I wanted my family back, I wanted my money back. Okay? And so I kind of come in it kind of lopsided, but I kept doing it because I had no other choice. Because my wife said I couldn't live with her and the kids if I didn't get my act cleaned up. And I was afraid to lose my kids, because when I was little, I knew what happened when my parents would fight and they were going to divorce, and how much that hurt me. And I knew I was hurting my kids. So I was forced. I ain't coming here for the fun of it. I was forced to do this thing. And guess what? It began to make a change. I'm going to tell you right now, 3 months into my recovery, the monsters in my head were so intense that I tried to blow my brains out because I couldn't stand it. But you have to understand, I was living out in the middle of the desert and didn't have a telephone. And if you're first in recovery and you can't communicate with somebody else, your neighbor is the worst best friend you ever had. Right here. But I made it. I didn't die. And here I am. 34 years later. This thing works. But we do become discouraged because it goes over and over. Some young lady who told me multiple times in treatment, and it finally took. Yeah.
I don't care how many times. I don't care how many times you come in my door. Come in my door, go drink that night, use drugs, come back in my door tomorrow. I'm still there. I haven't changed my attitude about this thing. You know, God, John, he was getting ready to go to, so this guy, me, I'm very grateful. You know, John was getting ready to go to earth, and he said, hey, God, what's on earth that's not in heaven? He said, pain. And God said, what's pain? He says, well, that's why I want you to go to earth. I want you to know what pain's all about. And John said, why do I have to know about pain? And God said, so when I ask you to give service, you'll have compassion. Those who have mental health and substance use disorders are not broken and need fixed. They are hurt and they need to heal.
Yes.
So I hope that tonight something stuck with you that will encourage you to do the next thing, whatever that is. Tell your neighbor, tell your friends, come volunteer at my organization, guide people to us, talk to your legislators, write letters. I don't know what you're going to do. Tomorrow go help your little old lady neighbor mow her lawn. If that's all you get out of there, we did something. But I found my tribe. I am never alone again. I was alone for a long time. Boy, it's hard for an empath to talk sometimes. Because I can feel everything. And there, it worked for that guy. It can work for you.
Yeah.
Bring him to us. We're waiting for you. All the recovery costs across the state are waiting for those people that need help to come. And we're going to produce the numbers for the legislators and the people that are looking at the money will know that not only are we doing what we were asked to do, but we're getting results. I'm like Nick, I can talk for hours.
We don't know that.
But I want to thank Magellan for doing this. They have really been the foundation to everything that's happened here today. We just provide a little heart and they provide the muscle. So thank you guys very much. And God bless all of you. Come see me.
Good job, bud.
The power of recovery. That's amazing. Thank you, John. Thank you to all the speakers we've had so far. It's really been amazing. So what we wanted to do now, when we started talking with John about doing this event is have some speakers and people who share some information, but really to hear from you guys, to bring together, a group of people who are in recovery, who are passionate about recovery, who are working recovery, and, kind of talk about what are some of the, things, celebrate what's working, what are some of the things that, are working, but maybe they need more support, maybe they need more funding, maybe people just need to know about it. A lot of times you see there's kind of two things. There's lack of resources, but then there's lack of knowledge of resources and that lack of support of resources that were already there. We heard a lot of those talked about today. But then when we found the recommendations from the Idaho Behavioral Health Council, we said, wow, this could be a really perfect framework to talk around, these issues, to have this discussion. So, what we had done, as I mentioned earlier, we selected these in the document, and, as mentioned earlier, there's a QR code. You can see the whole document, which is pretty in-depth. But what we just did was kind of cherry pick some of the recommendations that were specific to recovery and thought that would be a good opportunity to have a discussion around those. So at each table, there's a pad of paper, if you could select or elect somebody who might be willing to take notes for your table.
I'll do it. And what we wanted to do is, take some time to read over these recommendations. And just have a discussion about what are some ideas that you have. What are some ideas that you guys have maybe to operationalize some of these things? So what are some things that you could do, or that your community could do, or that agencies could do to operationalize some of these? And so what we're asked is, some things you come up with might be solutions or ideas for multiple recommendations. So if you make a recommendation, you write it down, write what number goes along with it, okay? And we're trying to get some ideas, and we'll give folks some time to do that now. And then we'll also, we have some fancy white paper, so what's
figure out, so you know that there's forensic peer support or recovery peer support or whatever it may be. So some kind of website or app that would be easily accessible for everybody. You just put in your zip code and it would tell you what resources are available around you. Another thing we talked about is, would it be possible to make the CIT training like just part of the police department here in Idaho? So I've had to call the police a few times for some, just to help with some clients who were feeling suicidal, and I've been told by dispatch that there's only a handful of CIT trained officers here in Twin Falls. And it'd be great if there would be more officers that were trained in that. We also, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the mobile crisis unit, but that's an amazing resource that we have here in Twin Falls. However, it's not 24/7. It's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And as we all know, most crises happen on the weekend or at nighttime, right? So it would be amazing. I don't know where that funding comes from, but if we could get that to be a 24/7 thing here in Region 5, that would be absolutely incredible. And then our third idea that we thought of was just really trying to get more education out there. One, helping our teachers become trauma-informed teachers, where they know what behaviors to look for in their students, because every addict has trauma in their history. Not every person who's traumatized becomes an addict, but every addict has trauma. And so if we can get better at recognizing those signs and getting treatment and help available to these young students in middle school, elementary school, high school, that would be amazing. And then it would also be really great if part of our curriculum here in Idaho included emotional resilience training, mental health, the importance of mental health. If that could be taught from kindergarten, from preschool, all the way up, that would literally save lives. If we can help people learn that emotions are important and healthy, and that it's okay to feel your emotions, and to find helpful ways to feel their emotions, that will save lives.
Awesome.
So I have the pleasure of bouncing around to a couple tables. So I think there's been some amazing ideas out there. Just an expansion off of what's been being talked about. We've felt like over the years, some of the things that have been a barrier is a lot of providers are in like their own silos. And so we're not able to collaborate and work together. And so our marketing department has actually just been recently talking about creating a network or a coalition of providers. I went to 2 different tables and I met 6 different people that I've never even known these resources existed in the Magic Valley. And so we're hurting the clients. They're falling through the cracks because we don't know these resources are available. And so that's been one of my big ones that I picked up from a couple of the tables. One other thing that I think is really important that we're I almost feel like missing. We don't talk much about youth peer support. And we're talking a lot about how do we help our youth and how do we engage and how do we really show up with them. Amazing youth peer support in our program, and nobody even knows about her, and we don't refer anybody to her. And she has an amazing resource to offer our youth, and we want to expand that program so much. And I love that our girls that spoke for us. That's an amazing way to help you guys, and we'll get with you guys because we want to talk about some stuff. But really helping the youth, and maybe it's not having them be this adult population, and the youth peer support could really help that. So I think a little bit more focus on the youth peer support. And then we talked a little bit about increasing the availability of peer support. We think the training is a barrier to some people. The cost can be a barrier, the availability can be a barrier, and so our suggestion is maybe some self-paced online classes. that people could do. It's very hard for someone to take 5 days off of work plus pay for the training. And so I know we've had several people who want to participate, but they don't have the availability to. So that would just be one of our big suggestions that we kind of focused on. And then like was mentioned, getting into the school systems. I heard some great resources that were out there. If we could get those into the schools and really be supporting groups of these ACEs out there, we've got some great support groups, but what about substance use support groups in the schools and trauma and these different experiences that our youth are experiencing, we're not supporting them in the schools. So just some things from my tables. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the youth peer support thing is huge. I mean, it's fairly new in the scheme of things, and that's kind of my main realm of working in with youth stuff. And I know John, like, for instance, he has these two awesome young women who are starting this group and doing all this, doing all this work. Well, one, it'd be nice if John could get some funding in some form or fashion to do the youth groups as in others, because I know he's just kind of doing it out of the kindness of his heart of knowing it. But wouldn't it be great if young people like them could be working as peer supports and be doing groups and reaching out to other people? So that's a very great point, and it's something that has lots of potential here, but also across the country. Somebody else? Dun, dun, dun. Good. All right.
No one, is there somebody else that wants to present? Go ahead.
So my name is Rick Whitaker, and I'm on the IBACC certification board for recovery coaches. And we have, during COVID, we have accepted some trainings that are like some video trainings that she was talking about. I don't believe that that's the best way to coach recovery coaches. I think actually the hands-on experience is great, but there is like a hybrid things, and there is some video. I've done a training during Zoom myself. Like I said, I don't think it's the best training, but it is available. And the whole recovery coach for youth has been an idea that's in my head forever. That would be so freaking awesome, because I'll tell you what, if I'd had somebody like them, or like when I was that age, who knows where my life may have went. Like may have not listened then. When I was 13 years old, I started doing drugs, but those seeds would have been planted inside of me. My life went a whole different way. I've been in recovery for 14 years now. I'm a really old guy, so it took me a long time to figure it out. But just to have somebody that can help you through those hard, critical situations when you're that age would be cool. It'd be awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I do a lot of work around suicide. I do a lot of work around suicide prevention and the Surgeon General report for 2021. But one of the things they talk about in there is addressing upstream factors, which I think is so huge and crucial, not just for suicide prevention, but mental health and all this stuff we've been talking about. We tend to not work on things till it's a full-blown crisis. But like if you start getting in schools, there's a couple of, and I think you have some up here, but there's a program called Hope Squad, which is like a school-based suicide prevention. There's other Sources of Strength, which is doing really great work where you start working with these young people so they know it's okay to ask for help. They know how to support their peers and do great things like they're doing. So, anybody else that want to talk about something they were talking about at their table? Or yes, ma'am. Oh, we got one here. What's that here? Right here in front of you.
I'd like to tag team onto the peer support and add parent support too, because the parents are, the front line to some of these kiddos, and most of them don't really even have any idea what to do with their kiddos because their own trauma or additional. So more family kind of peer support.
Yeah, and I think the Federation, they actually are on the Federation of Families of Idaho, and Ruth, I believe they're on the virtual piece, but I know that they've been wanting to, particularly in this area, get into this area, and that's one of their big specialties. With that, obviously, is the family support, and they're doing some great stuff with youth and their Youth Move Idaho group. So, but that's definitely huge. Yes, sir.
Herbert Romero, good evening. What an honor and privilege to be in front of all of you with Plain County Bellevue Haiti community, and of course with San Diego Enterprise Hotline. Our Hispanic community is growing tremendously over there in Blaine County. And I always say this, our Hispanic community doesn't need special attention, but it does need specific attention. And I think it's very key that we are aware of that. The way there's still stigma in a lot of these issues, it's like double, triple stigma within the Hispanic community. And I know it's growing in other communities here in Idaho. And I think it's very key to keep that in mind. With all due respect, I've seen the recommendations. Some of them were very vague and generic. But again, we have to be very specific. Just like the young lady said about youth programs, they need more attention. Please, let's not ignore, and I know that every single one of us are here for the community at large, but let's not forget our Hispanic immigrant community, Montana community, and I know that we do have some Chicanos, Spanish, bilingual, etc. But again, we have to keep that in mind. We have to spend some time strategizing and planning for that too, because again, it's growing. There is a need, and a lot of times they're not being served. And again, I think some ladies said about public marketing. That's very key. Awareness is very crucial because a lot of times our families do not know about the services. If we don't even know, and we were learning about each other years later, imagine some of our communities and families, they don't know. And mostly with COVID, just what happened, a lot of families don't know how organizations are opening up again. They don't know what are still there and what are not, because a lot of nonprofits did shut down. A lot of reasons were shut down. So again, please, let's continue to spend time with that community, of our Hispanic Latin communities, within your area. Perfect, Romero.
Well said.
Thank you. I'm Debbie Thomas. I'm the CEO of the Walker Center, and I want to thank Magellan and everybody else for being here. And I want to share that this information is very vital. I have the honor of being on the Governor's Advisory Board, which was the group of people underneath the Advisory Council. And your comment made me think about the fact that we had very specific recommendations. I was the chair of the Program and Services Committee, and we had Housing Committee, and obviously the one that we were talking, and all the things that you can read. And what doesn't represent on the piece of paper that is here is that there's already a lot of meat and details. But the nice thing is once these initiatives have started and the fact that Magellan is in the area and other people are in the area, we get to have our voices heard and put even more specific recommendations. Because it looks kind of superficial when you say, well, try and do something in 6 months or a year or 3 years. But know that if you go in and start reading, that there's more depth and that they really are listening and there's money behind it and there's all this passion in the room behind it. So thank you, and thank you for making me think about the fact that we should share that. Don't think that it's not useful, it is. It's powerful what we're doing.
Awesome, well said. Well said. On that note, I have a question for Dave to put you on the spot here. So obviously you're very passionate about this work. The governor's very passionate. Y'all come up with this great council strategic plan. I mean, what can people do? Like people here that are passionate about it as well. What can they do to help you guys operationalize this stuff?
Well, that's a great question. I appreciate that. And it's really these types of conversations. Like I like to say, you are the ones that actually do the work. We're just trying to help and support you. And so we're really looking for these specific suggestions. And I've heard a bunch here tonight, all the way from, I think over here in apps, so we can help navigate people. It's like, wow, how do we miss that? So that seems like a great suggestion. And around the peer support for adolescents, recovery coaching for adolescents. Those are the kind of things that, frankly, we don't know. It's you all that are in, dealing with this either personally or professionally on a day-to-day basis. We want to hear from you. Hispanic population, thank you for that excellent suggestion, so that we know how to actually operationalize that. And one of our principles is we have to stay close to the consumer community and close to the provider community, because we want things that are actually going to work and actually going to solve problems. And so we do have an email on our website that you can get from that QR code. You can send us suggestions. As we organize the project teams, we're going to be out looking for involvement. So we encourage you to look for that in the next couple of months as those come online. We don't plan to run everything. We just have set the vision. And so if there's something you have a lot of passion about, I'd say go for it. You know, it's that we were all kind of rowing in the same direction. So just these types of form interactions are exactly what we're looking for. We are going to hire a project manager. We actually just did hire a project manager to help us implement. That'll help us make sure we move forward, and they'll help us kind of organize this as we move forward. So this is good stuff.
All right, we're gonna, anybody else before we, we're gonna let John, take us out here, get some, all right. I was gonna say that everything that has been discussed in here has been discussed with me and my team. We have, except for one thing that came at the end, we have not really addressed the Hispanic issue. So now we have a new one.
By the way, we have a task force as a response to that situation.
Okay, we're gonna be in contact. One of the things I want to mention about how we view the recovery center is we want to be that one-stop place. In other words, when they come in our door, we know everyone out there, and so we can connect them. So that there's one place we know people can go to, and all the resources are listed out, and the recovery coaches can begin connecting people out. So I really encourage you in the community to be calling us and giving us your information, letting us know what you do. We've been collecting, we've got a book of resources now, and we're still building. I just got a really nice veterans paper the other day. And as the time goes by and we collect this up and we review it and renew it, because we're getting ready to send our team out, go to all the resources and check them out again, we become the one stop. Also, I want to offer my services to the community in that I can go to the high schools, and we want to get into them now. I've been to Mendota. I was asked to come back to Mendota for a special presentation with a special group of kids, and it was wonderful. It was dynamic. I've been to Jerome twice. I've been to the Hispanic Action for the CSI. If you need someone to come talk to your adolescents, whether to tell my story, whether I'm a nurse by training, I'm a nurse educator, I can talk about Maslow's hierarchy, we can talk about love and belonging and all the rest of it. But if you have a tough topic, suicide, mental health, substance use disorders, I'm your guy. I got a degree, it says I'm allowed to do that. Now, I'm not sure if it was COVID, but I haven't been asked back for a while, so I don't know what that means. Sometimes I do some things that are a little different and unique, but but I would like to see, we had Chris from Pocatello, the Recovery Center. I have Nancy here from Idaho Falls. She's the director at the Recovery Center up there. I would really like to see the Recovery Centers move in that direction, that we become that one-stop shopping center. That's where we want to be. So that we're really the ones that are out there talking to everybody, so why not centralize this thing a little bit? So if you know people that are doing things, whether they're making beds for kids, what is this, Sleep in Heavenly Peace, is that, those type of things, we want that information. Flood us with it, so that we know that we can go out there and start providing all these resources. I think this is one of the most dynamic things I've done in a long, long time. I think this is the start of something brand new. And peer support out in the schools, we're already talking about that. Where we're going to get these peer support. My warriors, let me talk about my warriors, okay? My two warriors here have been for the start. We've been at this about a year now. We've gone up to 15, but mostly it's me and these two. But it's two. I was one, now we're two. We become 4, we become 8, right? It doesn't matter how long it takes, as long as we keep doing it. What happens with good ideas? I got a great idea. I used to tell them here at CSI, I work here at CSI. I don't like this thing. I'm loud enough, right?
Right.
Okay. So at CSI, they come up with this new idea. And I go, okay, let's wait 6 months and see what really happens. And most of the time, it would fall by the wayside. Because why? Great idea, no follow through. Now, we got the strategic plan. I want to tell you, Dave, from the heart, this is a wonderful piece of work. I read the whole thing, okay? I didn't understand some of it, but I read it. I didn't remember most of it. I thought it was good. It made me feel good. But I look at that and I go, here it is. We've been given the foundation now. We need to do this. Because we got a whole bunch of kids in this state that are wonderful and lovable. Okay? And they need to know they're part of us. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and then I'll be quiet. The hallmark of mental health and substance use disorders is to disconnect. If I'm depressed, I don't want to connect. If I'm schizophrenic, I can't connect. If I'm an alcoholic and drug addict, I don't want you to connect me because I don't want you to know what I'm doing. So it's disconnect. This culture of ours is a disconnect. I don't need you anymore, folks. I got my best friend here. You know, I was in a restaurant the other day and there was an old man and 3 young guys. Looked like they were on a construction crew. 3 guys were doing this. You know, man was eating lunch. And finally, when I got done, I told him, I says, eating all alone today, huh? You guys looked up at me. But we've disconnected. People's grandchildren live in New York City or wherever in the world. We were tribal, we depended on each other. We need to go back to that tribal feeling of connecting. Now, some people already have connections, societies and things to belong to, but there are some of us that don't fit in. We've got to learn how to be inclusive and reconnect to one another. That's the solution to the cultural piece we have in America right now. We have so disconnected that now I can hate you in your belief system. That is wrong. Even if you and I completely disagree, you're still another human being. And you've got to connect. Somewhere, somehow. There's some brain in there where you should be able to connect. So, you know, it's been a great night. We're all going to leave this room. What's going to happen? What's going to happen?
We're gonna get things done.
Yeah, there we go. Everyone's on the track. Amen, sister. We have a deal. I am free So anyway, I'm going to stop with that. But my point being is all this has been discussed. My team is ready. But don't stop tonight. Go out filled with passion and start telling people. There's this place called Recovery in Motion. There's this thing called the Strategic Action Plan. Do you know what the state's doing? I want to say one more thing and I'm done, I promise. In this ultra-conservative, red as red state, they are being progressive socially. That's exactly what the strategic plan. This is a social progressive plan. So don't tell me, you know, it doesn't work and we can't do all this together, because we can't. And we are. And last thing, please remember, we're just all walking each other home. That's all we're doing. Thank you very much. Amen. Amen.